everyone, this is Jim Ross from 3 Mile Domination. It's the 3 Mile Domination show, and in this episode we're doing a vendor spotlight once again. And today we have David Dent from Yardi Matrix. How's it going, David?
Going great. How are you, Jim?
Good. It took a while, but we finally got this thing to work.
We did.
Gotta love technology. That's how it goes.
Yeah.
I can go a little bit more in the center. I'll cut this out, but there you go. Perfect.
Okay.
All right, great. So, David, again, Yardi Matrix wasn't really on my radar until just a few weeks ago, so I'm sure many other people don't really know what it is either, so enlighten us.
Yeah, so Yardi Matrix is the research division of Yardi, which is a large property management kind of enterprise software package that a lot of commercial real estate runs on, whether it's apartments or office building, warehouses, other types of real estate. And so we are the research part of the organization, and really what we're trying to do is add value to property owners, brokers, lenders, property managers, asset managers, people who are involved with the industry, trying to understand trends, whether it's operational trends, how to manage property more effectively, or if it's macro trends in the economy or with kind of capital markets trends and things like that. So we're trying to give people a broad perspective as to what's happening with commercial real estate. And we have a particular body of work that's of interest to self-storage in particular in the new supply area, in addition to some other things. So storage is a particular focus for us, and we're excited to talk about the new research we have coming out this year.
Nice. Yeah, I just did a little demo myself on it just a few weeks back. I was blown away. I mean, there's almost too much information if you can say that, but it just goes on and on. You can just delve as deep as you want, really, into a certain market. And
the idea is to really try to integrate as much information as is available into one place so that people who are trying to understand the market, trying to make a decision about what to do with a store, maybe they are a lender trying to think about where there might be new lending opportunities, or maybe they're trying to think about if they should be in San Antonio or Seattle. Those types of questions are all addressed, and really our perspective is really from the perspective of different types of property participants. So it's acquisition teams or property managers and everybody. And so there's something in there kind of for everyone. And to your point, it's very integrative, I should say interactive and integrated in how we're constantly bringing in new tools. So one of the things you'll see in the storage portal, in addition to the multifamily portal now, is that we have integrated demographics. So you can see the local demographics, 1, 3, and 5 mile radius. You may not have seen this yet, Jim, but it's out there now. It's really cool. Huh. And it'll tell you local demographic characteristics, population density, income levels, age characteristics, things like that. So
really?
And that's a new feature we've just added in the past few months, and it's a direct outgrowth of people who are involved in the space saying, like, hey, we would love to be able to see this integrated in the system. So the system's constantly getting new information and features. So check back every month because there's constantly new functionality being released.
Yeah, it just has me thinking, like, doing feasibilities and stuff like that. That's always an important component. So if it's all kind of within the same system, that's fantastic.
Yeah, that's really the idea, is to really help people. We try to understand we're software people and we're also real estate people, and we're trying to really help bring those two powers together to help real estate people understand how they can use software to do what they're trying to do faster and more effectively. So it's really a tool that helps people save time. We know we don't know everything about a local market because there's so many factors, but sure, if we can give people a snapshot from a distance, it can save tens of thousands of dollars, hundreds of hours of time of kind of an acquisition team or a due diligence team and trying to understand the local market. So it's just very effective.
Oh yeah, I mean I'm all about trying to save time, and that's our most important factor. And if I was just thinking about that, I can probably do 80% of the work I have to do when it comes to good feasibility type of work and making sure if a property is going to pan out. You can do so much now from the comfort of your own home or in your office and your desktop and using a tool like that.
That's right.
That's fantastic. And then,
Right.
again, I was just kind of playing around with it, and hence the name, a 3 mile radius. And I was kind of doing 3 mile rings around properties I run, and I was like, holy crap! There's like I didn't realize how much information was actually out there. To be honest with you, and you kind of put it all into one house, one software, one tool. That's great.
Well, and what's neat about it is to kind of tie it in with what we're seeing broadly. What everyone's hearing about is this concept of big data, and I want to point out that this is really the leading edge. That
Yeah.
next year there will be a whole new suite of capabilities, and 2 years from now, what we have today will look elementary, and so
Hmm.
it's going to change a lot. And a lot of people are thinking about it, and there's roadmaps for various things that are going to happen, and it's a really exciting time, and it's going to get a lot more sophisticated, I think, going forward.
That's cool. Well, again, obviously you're in the business and you know those backwards and forwards, and you have it's all about data. So you're probably seeing data throughout all the different markets and what's going on, of course, in the storage industry. So what are some of the current trends and stuff that you're seeing right now? You got your finger on the pulse of it. What's going on?
Yeah, so a few things, high level current trends. We're just coming out of earnings season with the public REITs, and so we're hearing the news from them, which has been very positive, and they've been trading up after as a result of that. So you've probably heard rents so far this year have been pretty strong. I think
Yep.
there was some concern that rents over the past year might soften a little bit because
Sure.
they've decelerated in some other property types like multifamily. But rents year over year are still in the kind of 3 to 4% range for a lot of storage, which is great. So it's kind of multifamily plus a percent or two. So that's fantastic. And then in some of the markets, things are looking really good. Occupancy also is pretty stable. There is a little bit of seasonality in the usual markets where we see
Oh,
some
sure.
inflow and outflow, but
Yep.
for the most part, things have been pretty good. Um, and then new supply in most metros is pretty good, although there are some areas where we kind of want to talk about. And
Yeah.
so, one of the things to think about is what are the big stories of this year? And one of them, of course, is all the storms we've had. And if you think about where we've had supply issues, both in multifamily and in storage, there's been a little bit of a concern that we might be oversupplied in Texas. Well, with all the storms, a lot of that supply has been taken up, and
Build
at
up.
least for the next year or two,
Yep.
that supply will probably be consumed. The same thing is happening over in Florida. In fact, I was just checking the data
Hmm.
that came out over the weekend for properties under construction in Florida,
Yeah.
and and in general, Florida is in a pretty good, healthy supply demand balance. Although Miami is building a lot right now, so
Tons.
that's one of the markets where
Yep.
there's a lot of building in storage. Denver is another market where there's a lot of building. Uh,
Yep.
Raleigh Raleigh has a lot of building. Nashville is kind of on the edge.
Hmm.
But at the same time, Nashville also has a lot of job growth, and if you think about kind of what's driving the job growth in Nashville, is there's a lot of reason to be optimistic about Nashville. There may be little pockets, and it's a developing market, and so there may be some local supply pressure, but for the most part, Nashville is going to grow into the supply that's coming online. Um, one of the things that's interesting is um, Miami may have heavy supply, and people may say, well, that's too much. But at the same time, it's a coastal market,
Yeah.
and so there's probably also some commercial usage of some of those storage facilities. And if you think about what's happening with industrial, you see a lot of demand for industrial, and we know that about a quarter or so, maybe a third of self storage is for kind of small business purposes.
Yeah.
So in the coastal markets, we might actually see a heavier absorption than you might expect because of kind of overflow from what's happening on the industrial side of the market. So that's one of the reasons why I'm not overly concerned about Miami. And in fact, the data that just came out over the weekend is that some of the deliveries have finally occurred this fall in Miami, and that
Hmm.
the number of units under construction is now falling as we kind of move into December. On the other hand, some of the markets in Florida look like Orlando, Tampa look fantastic, and so
Yeah.
people are saying that there's going to be extra demand in there in Tampa and Orlando as those markets continue to grow. So we're seeing kind of positive momentum there. I'm not going to hit on all the markets, Jim, but just if I can mention something I saw in the news this morning, you may have seen as well, that was kind of interesting, that we have seen in the data over the past couple of years, but we haven't seen too many people comment on it. And that's that the number of millennials in Washington, D.C. is now shrinking. For a number of years, millennials were moving to Washington, D.C. out of college to take jobs in government and in the technology, telecom, the industries legal around that area. But we are now seeing millennial out-migration from Washington, D.C. So it's interesting. Washington, D.C. is always an interesting market because there's so many different forces that impact it. But I wanted to kind of point out that that's a market that it has a fair amount of supply for a Northeast corridor market. It has a fair amount of new construction currently.
Yeah.
And a little bit concerning that we're seeing the millennial out-migration. And then in the office environment, you may see some negative news about rents being a little bit soft in DC as well. And so I kind of want to point out that there's some interesting markets out there. There are other markets that people don't really talk about very much, like Minneapolis and Kansas City, that don't get a lot of press, that have very, very little new construction, that are growing, that are still internally growing. They have domestic migration, they have international immigration, so the kind of fundamental picture is very positive in some markets like that. So there's a lot of nuance to kind of the supply picture, and in general, there's not a lot of new supply except in 4 or 5 markets, 6 markets. And if you're in those markets, you're well aware of that supply pressure.
Yeah, I actually just had a consulting call last Friday with a guy in Denver, and he was building. In fact, he's going to be opening probably by another month. And he's just like kind of freaking out because now he has like 3 other ones that are coming into his market that weren't there when he first started to build. And now he's just kind of like, no, it's only so much supply and so much demand to go around. So I can feel him. And then Denver, like you said, you hit on Denver. It's just been crazy, the kind of building going on out there.
It's a very interesting market, and Denver is one of those markets where I think people are making long-term bets, and they're saying, I'm going to take a position because I believe that 20 years from now, Denver will be one of the winners in terms of metro areas in the country, and they're going to pay what it's going to cost, and it's going to be a little bit of a long lease up, I think, in Denver for some of these stores. But I think ultimately it'll be all right. And if you look in Denver, a lot of the supply is actually concentrated. There's some folks who are building in some areas where I think they'll be all right if they're able to kind of get the right site in the right pocket of town that doesn't have as much supply as some of the other areas.
And that's exactly it. I found pockets that are just like that. They're kind of not metropolitan. They're kind of tucked away, but they're great sites. So I know about that. So you kind of touched on it as far as it's a long-term bet. I'm not saying bet, but it's a long-term play with a lot of these guys. Again, you have your finger on the pulse of what's going on. Do you have a kind of like how like the future of stores where you kind of see it going?
There's a couple things. There's a couple areas that I think are interesting, and one is kind of financial, and then another one is kind of qualitative to think about, and they're both interesting. If you kind of step back a couple years and you think about what people are talking about today, people are kind of saying, well, the peak of the commercial real estate market in the most recent cycle was maybe 2015. And a lot of that was driven by the fact that in 2014, we had new lows reached in interest rates, which kind of stimulated the capital market, stimulated the economy. We also had the expansion was in full effect as the economy recovered from the recession. And so things were getting better. And that was a stimulus to us a couple of years ago. Well, that stimulus pressure has now decelerated. And now what we're faced with is rising materials costs. We have lumber prices, which are up substantially. Copper prices, aluminum prices are all up substantially in the past couple of years. And we also have interest rates, which are now kind of bouncing off of the low.
Yeah.
And so I just kind of want to point out that what we have this kind of deceleration in the financial markets, which is kind of muting things a little bit. And I think is one of the reasons why we've seen softer numbers. I think sometimes the supply pressure gets a lot of the press when the reality is that maybe the peak of the new demand was a couple of years ago, but things are still very good. So that's kind of one financial thing to think about. Another financial aspect to think about is kind of an economic driver is migration patterns. And that is that during the recession, people weren't moving. And now people, because of the economic recovery and kind of demographic change, people are moving. The average baby boomer is now 62 years old, 63 years old next year.
Yeah.
So the average person who's going to move for retirement does so in their early 60s. And so we are now in the heart of the moving period of the baby boomers. And the boomers are really significant because there are just as many boomers as there are millennials. And of course, millennials get a lot of press, but there are just as many boomers.
Sure.
And the boomers are vastly more wealthy than the millennials. And they have a ton of stuff, and they're going to need to store it. And so a lot of, following age cohorts and following kind of what's happening with boomers versus millennials, I think is really interesting. And it gets to kind of some of the qualitative trends that we're seeing, which is that the storage market isn't just throwing up a one-story facility anymore, and people show up and store whatever it might be in a generic, say, 10 by 10.
Yeah.
Storage is getting more sophisticated, as you know, and as you advise your clients, Jim, in new strategies. And what people are realizing is that these new strategies really are effective in attracting new customers, more affluent customers who are willing to spend more on new types of services. And so we're seeing a growth in storage facilities that, say, have wine storage, facilities that have on-site retail of various types, maybe a restaurant. There's more and more, you'll hear about concierge facilities. And so there are these different types of things that are added value that people are taking advantage of and are bringing new customers. And so the storage industry is deepening in a way. A lot of people are thinking about the storage industry, wondering if it will ever exhaust its opportunities. I don't really see any evidence of that yet, although it's a behavioral question ultimately.
Yeah.
But what we do see is that people have a lot of stuff, and people seem to want to store it. Apartments are getting smaller, and they're getting more expensive, and storage continues to be some of the cheapest real estate around in terms of rentals and land basis, and so it continues to be very attractive. But kind of recognizing some of these changes in how storage operates is important. And one of the things that I want to mention along the lines of that is technology. And it's just that it's very obvious that there's going to be a lot of technological change over the next decade or so. And it's unknowable how that will evidence itself and how it will impact storage.
Yeah.
But we've already talked about concierge services. There's the move toward autonomous vehicles. So there's a very basic question of what happens with some of our basic land options. Is there a new land option where we can locate some of our actual physical storage locations more distantly, and we can use maybe internet marketing to attract our customers, because so many of our customers are already using Yelp and other internet sources to find us anyway. So there's a whole series of technological...
Don't get me started on Yelp. Sorry.
Yeah, so there's a whole series of technological questions
that
are out there.
Just look, not to interrupt you, but just look, literally 3 years ago. I'm serious, 3 years ago. And it's changed a ton, just as far as how people are finding us. And if you just look at the data as far as where it used to be drive-by, it used to be referrals, it used to be internet. Internet is like doubling. It seems like every year about 10%. It keeps creeping up. 10%, 20%, 30%. It just keeps going up and up and up. It's not going to go backward. So, yeah, your technology it's don't overlook it, because if you do, yeah, you'll be out of business soon. So keep up on it. But go ahead. Sorry.
Well, I was telling a friend of mine that I went to get food after work the other day, and I was trying to decide where to go, and I noticed that the McDonald's was full, and one of the other stores was not full, and I thought, I wonder if that has to do with the fact that McDonald's has a very very nice app with a lot of both offers and deals, and the other stores did not have one. I looked for it; they did not have an app.
Sure. Yep. Yep.
So I went to McDonald's because they had the coupon for me.
It's convenience, and you're going where the attention is. You're making it easier for the customer. So, I mean, we need to have a whole conversation just about technology and making for customers. We need to do that, but I want to kind of keep this around 20 minutes here. Do you have anything else you want to wrap up on? And I'm going to put you on the spot though, because you're going to come back, right? We're doing
absolutely.
We're doing a part 2.
And thanks for having us. And yeah, I would say, in terms of thinking about things, we talked about some of the operational issues and trends, and I'd say just for property owners, be aware of things like, can you hear me okay, Jim?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. I was going to say, be aware for property owners and things. If you're seeing softness in transaction markets, that's something that people are thinking about. I always want to mention, if people are within a year or two of trying to make a decision about things, sure. Transaction volume is down substantially, and financing markets are a little bit tighter. And so one of the things to be thinking about is kind of your positioning. You want to start making those calls ahead of time. Reach out to your good advisors and counselors for those types of questions, because things are more difficult, and self-storage is the type of asset that doesn't always get the same kind of banking support and transaction support that some of the other commercial real estate types do. And so I just want to point out to folks that if you're in that market, and a lot of folks in terms of where they are in their life cycle and estate planning, they may be thinking about a 1031 exchange.
Sure.
I would just say that operationally things. I was just saying, I think operationally things look good. I think revenue trends are still positive. Yep. Occupancy is still healthy. Supply pressure is very minimal. I think the real question is, if you have to make a decision in the next few years, I think it's a good time to talk with your advisors about what that might look like. Think about your options. Really make a plan, because sometimes it takes a while to kind of think about those things. And there are many people who want to help, lots of people who are interested in this business. And so you have lots of options. But I'd just say, given the tone of things, I'd encourage you to kind of, and you're thinking about things, go ahead and start having those conversations sooner rather than later. That's all.
Yeah, and that's one thing with this industry. Like I said, talk, ask questions. It's really, so many people are an open book, and there is resources out there, such as, obviously your software. And right. I tell people, if they're looking to get into a market, just pick up the phone and start talking to some owners, and they'll flat out tell you what's going on. Very rarely do I get somebody that doesn't want to help. So that's one thing I love about this industry. We're pretty open and trying to help everybody.
Absolutely, it's one of the best property types. Unequivocally, I mean, in my view at least, and not only that, but it's large enough that it's sophisticated, but it's small enough that you can find people in the industry. And you're absolutely right. There's a spirit of collegiality and a closeness in the storage industry in particular that's really unique in commercial real estate. And you're right. People should reach out, because it's a great place to be. There's a lot of good resources out there. There's space for a lot more people. And so, yeah, absolutely.
Yep. And so, speaking of resources and all of that, if people are trying to get more information, give us a plug. How do they get reach the website for Yardi Matrix, and how do they learn more information about it?
Yeah, absolutely. You can Google Yardi Matrix and find us. You can.
And Yardi is Yardi, right?
Yes, Yardi, right? And it's a large company, but it's a family company, and that's the family name. And Matrix is the research group, so you can find us there. And then please reach out to me on email or on the telephone. I always say this in conferences, and very few people actually reach out to me. So please reach out. We're happy to be a resource to anybody and help out. My email address is david.dent. My last name is spelled D as in David, E-N-T. And that's at yardi.com. So david.dent at yardi.com.
Okay.
And you can also call me. Our telephone number at the office is 1-800-866-1124, and my extension is 2084. So please reach out. We'll kind of point you to some resources. If you want a full demo, we can set you up with that. And again, just happy for the opportunity to be here, Jim. Thank you.
That's great. Well, like I said, you're a wealth of information, and we're gonna have to do this again. I mean, I loved it. Yeah, it's one thing me just sitting here blabbing and talking, and something pops in my mind. That's great, but I don't know. You're much more involved in the data and all that kind of stuff. So I'd love to be able to. We'll do this again if you're game. I'm game.
Yeah, let's do it. Maybe I can bring some charts next time.
No charts. No charts. No.
Okay. All right. No math.
Exactly. No.
All right.
All right. Thanks a lot.
All right. Bye-bye.
All right. Take care. Thanks so much for watching. We'd love to give away free books that will help your self-storage business. To pick up your free copy of Self-Storage Domination, the actions you must take to dominate your competition, simply go to selfstoragedomination.com.